Welcome to Retirement Rescue Radio, a show specifically designed to help retirees and pre-retirees maximize their financial efficiency so you can live the retirement lifestyle you've always imagined. Your host is Nate Miller, investment advisor representative and author of the CPR Retirement Rescue Roadmap. Nate discusses thoughts and ideas from some of today's most knowledgeable professionals in the field of finance. He offers strategies along the way to help you make better financial decisions so you can maximize your retirement. This is Retirement Rescue Radio.
Well, hey there, Retirement Rescue Radio listeners. We've got a very special episode today. We've got Don Ezra, and Don has had one heck of an illustrious career in the insurance and financial industries, beginning all the way back into the 70s. He had a 26-year career at Russell Investments, culminating when he became its co-chair of global consulting. And in 2010, Don graduated to a part-time schedule that gave him more freedom to pursue a wide variety of other interests. And he's going to share a lot of those with us here today. And since then, Don's also served on the Joint Investment Committee of Margaret A. Cargill Philanthropies. He's been on the advisory board of the World Pension Summit and on the scientific advisory board of Manifold Partners. He's also become an occasional contributor to the Financial Times, where he is author of a column called The Art of Investing. I could talk about his accomplishments all day, but simply put, Don's passion is to teach others about personal financial planning, investing, and the economic and subjective aspects of happiness, especially as it pertains to life after full-time work, what some of us may still call retirement. And I also find it pretty interesting talking to someone like Don about his retirement plans, given his extensive experience in the pension industry. So we also discuss his newest book, Life 2, where he helps readers conquer their irrational fears, put themselves in the driver's seat, get an understanding of their financial situation, and take control of this extraordinary period of their life. In our conversation, Don and I talk about why your identity is not defined by what you get paid to do, the irrational fears that some of us may face as we transition into retirement, what phase of life is actually the happiest, and why, and even 7 keys to an abundant life, and how to find real lasting happiness at every stage of life. And in this interview, Don is a quote machine, turning out wise nuggets all throughout the interview. And so without further ado, my interview with Don Ezra. All right, Retirement Rescue Radio listeners, we've got a very special guest. I've got Don Ezra with me today. Don, how are you?
I am terrific, thank you, and all the happier for chatting with you.
Well, great. Well, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. Are you ready to help rescue some retirements?
Oh, between us, we should be able to do that.
All right, great. So, we just went through a lot of stuff in your bio, your intro here a little bit ago, and honestly, a lot of that stuff can be found online. But is there anything that you'd like to share with my listeners that could be interesting and unique about you that maybe is not very well discoverable there to kind of help, make you a little bit more human for them?
Well, I think there is one thing that is almost unique about me, and that is how lucky I've been in my life. I've had a number of incredible coincidences that have influenced or changed my life's direction. Give you a couple of examples. Right at the start, I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do as a career. Mm-hmm. I became an actuary by chance. And a guidance counselor at university, noting that I had degrees in math and economics, said, "Have you ever heard of actuaries?" And I said, "Yes, actually, I have. My mother told me she once dated one." And that led me to becoming an actuary. As simple as that. And
simple as that.
Some years later, I had all kinds of stuff in my career. I'd had many years of trying to run my own consulting business with little or no success. One day I just decided, that's it. I'm approaching the age of 40. I'm a failure. It's about time I did something different. Today's the day I need to start thinking about it. On the very same day, a friend of mine approached me and said, "Have you heard of Russell Investments in the state of Washington?" And I want to approach them, but I don't want to do it on my own. I want to do it with you. The very same day. And the two of us went there. We had one day of chatting with the folks at Russell. We shook hands and came back and started Russell Canada. And that started after 7 years of going back and forth. It started a 25-year career where I ended up finding myself. I ended up working with giant pension funds like GM, IBM, AT&T. I ended up working for a couple of years with Bill Sharp just before he was awarded his Nobel Prize.
Oh, nice.
I ended up becoming global head of Russell and going around the world, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And all of that when I considered myself a failure at the age of 40, because on the same day I decided I needed to do something, a friend of mine decided exactly the same thing.
You know, it's amazing how failure is not necessarily failure. It's just a learning opportunity.
It turned out to be that way, but believe me, at the time, I didn't think so.
No, it's so hard once we're going through it to have that perspective.
Right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Well, when I introduced you, I even asked, if you were ready to help rescue some retirements, but you don't really even like being called retired, like a retired actuary. What do you prefer to be like? If you're introducing yourself, what do you like to introduce yourself as?
Well, I don't even like the word retirement because it's so backward looking. I stole a phrase from George Russell, my boss and mentor, who said he graduated from full-time work. And so I've graduated. I'm a postgraduate one, but I hate the word former because it suggests that what's in the past is the only thing that's important. So I think as a retiree, you've got a world ahead of you and you ought to be in control. And so if I had a business card, what I would put on it is happily retired, not just retired, but happily. It makes all the difference because it says, I'm enjoying this, I'm in control. And my identity isn't former so-and-so. What I used to get paid for is not relevant to who I am today.
That could be the difference between married and happily married too, right?
Oh, absolutely. The word happily says an awful lot. Yes.
It does. And obviously you've got a little bit of a different take on retirement. And in your book, Life 2 is kind of a little bit of a testament to that. So I'm curious, with the name Life 2, how did you come up with that? Because it's a very interesting take.
Oh, I don't have much of an imagination, so I didn't dream up the name. I just thought of it as life after work. And then a very precise mathematical friend said, you don't mean life after work, no? You mean life after full-time work. Yeah, okay, it's that extra freedom and flexibility that I'm thinking of. But just try to keep saying life after full-time work. It just doesn't roll off the tongue. No. So I did what all consultants do. I created an acronym. Life after full-time work, LAFTW, call it WO, LAFTW, Laugh 2. And suddenly in my head, I could hear a Texan friend of mine saying Life 2. And once I called it Life 2, everything fell into place. It's long enough to be a life in its own right. It's not just an afterthought. It's typically happier than what I now think of as life 1, our working life. It needs education, just as we needed education before entering our working life, and so on. So it was quite accidental.
Completely accidental. I like that. And I love the Texas friend, Laugh 2. It sounds like life.
Yeah.
So I'm in Kansas and grew up on a farm. So my natural speech is very redneck. So I definitely understand the Southern drawl, and it comes out sometimes as well. So Life 2 or Life After Full-Time Work didn't really work as a title. So are you still working full-time? Are you part-time? What would you consider your working career now? Because you're still doing stuff. So how would you define that?
Yeah, my family and I disagree on this. They think I'm working full-time. I don't. What we agree on is that I'm fully occupied, but I don't consider it to be work. I do things that I want to do. I do things that I choose to do, and I do it all without payment, or at least not financial payments. My blog posts get me a reward in the form of emails that readers write to me from all over the world, not just the States, from Australia, from South Africa, and everywhere, telling me that something I wrote changed the way they thought about something in life, changed the actions they were taking. And that emotional reward is my payment, really.
Okay. So now we've got the story behind the title of the book and how that came about. How did the book even come about, period? Like, what was your inspiration for wanting to write the book?
Oh, desperation. I felt personally, I retired when I wanted to, in the way I wanted to. And so it was amazing and shocking to me that I felt totally discombobulated as a result. I had lost my sense of what was the main purpose every day. I remember saying this at the time, I felt like a very healthy tree that had been uprooted. And I needed to plant new roots, but I didn't know what kind of tree I wanted to be. I didn't know where I wanted to plant new roots. And when I did plant them, it took time for them to become firm. And that made me realize, well, it took me 3 years by the time all of this happened. Okay. And that made me realize, gosh, I'm sure I'm not the only person going through this. And I actually gave a talk in which I told former clients of Russell. I just gone the year before, and they invited me back to give me a talk to say, what is this like? And I told them the way I felt discombobulated and what I was trying to do about it. It's the only time in my life I've ever had a standing ovation. And I know clearly the clients must have had some affection for the guy they'd been dealing with all these years. But more than that, it got into their heads because they realized this was something they were going to go through one day. And so I thought, let me research this and help with all of that. And fortunately, now I had the time. And so I did my research, reading my own experience, put it all together. I don't have original ideas. What I've always been good at is taking other people's ideas and putting them together and getting something useful that you can teach others with. So my analogy, given the scientific background, is that other people create atoms. I am no good at creating atoms. I can take their atoms and make a molecule they haven't thought of.
Yeah. And I love how you put that. You put that much better phrased than how I normally talk about myself. I'll tell myself that I'm a really good monkey, meaning if I see someone else doing it, I can do that. Right. And so I say, like, any success I've had as a financial advisor is because I've got a lot of great financial advisors that I'm following in the footsteps of, and yes. So, yeah, it's the same way.
Lots of people have said this. I mean, Isaac Newton said, if I've seen further than others, it's because I've been standing on the shoulders of giants. I mean, we all use the ideas of others to be able to develop our own ideas.
Absolutely. And so that, 3 years to figure out your life too. When you think about it in the grand scheme of things, that doesn't seem like a really long time. Again, I know when you're going through it, it doesn't seem like you can look back on it yet. But, because I'd say life one in what I was trying to figure out for what I wanted to do with my life, that took like 30 some years to, really figure that out. So 3 years kind of sounds like a breath of fresh air. But a lot of people don't know that that's going to be coming. So if they realize it's coming, do you think that can help them get through it?
I think so. And I think if you start maybe 5 years before you're planning to retire, that's a good time. Mostly because it may not, you may think this is 5 years before you plan to retire. It may be less than that. Surveys show that half of workers retire earlier than they planned, partly because maybe they've been laid off, but maybe ill health hit them, or maybe the ill health of someone they had to look after. So they weren't able to go through the work career for as long as they wanted. So it's worth starting early. There's no magic about 5 years. I mean, it's just a number that comes to mind. The idea being, though, that this isn't an overnight thing. It's not something you suddenly reach a decision about and move on. It's potentially a big change in life and potentially an even bigger change in your mindset. So give yourself some time to think it over. And so in the book, I ask you some questions you can ask yourself to give you a start. It's different for everyone. And the way in which you answer these questions will lead to your way of doing it. It may even turn out that when you actually start doing this, it doesn't give you the satisfaction you thought it would, like as in my case. I thought this was going to be great, and the first 3 years it wasn't. But once you've thought about it, once you've planned, what that does is that even though nothing in life ever works out according to plan, the fact that the thought process, the planning process gives you resilience to be able to change the plan when you need to. I can remember a quote from Eisenhower. Nixon. This is how old I am. Nixon and Eisenhower were sort of in my time. Nixon, in his book, wrote about Eisenhower talking about D-Day, saying, the plan is nothing. Planning is everything, because nothing's going to work out the way you want. The fact that you've planned gives you the resilience. And that's why I suggest start 5 years beforehand.
Yeah. Oh, and that is important, because I can't tell you the number of times where I've had a couple sitting in my conference room, and we're trying to go over the things they want to do in retirement. And one of them might say, like, well, I haven't really thought much about it. And the other one will say something that they wanted to do. And the other one will look over at them like, I never knew you wanted to do that. Like, those are probably conversations that should have been had sooner.
Yes, very much so.
Good deal. And so, that moving into life too can cause a lot of maybe apprehension or anxiety for a lot of people. I mean, financially alone, right? Because now we're not working, we're not getting a steady paycheck, and we're supposed to spend the money that we've been saving our entire life. It's a complete 180 from what we've been doing, right? But even in addition to the financial side of things, moving into that second, the life too, can be pretty daunting for some. I guess, what would be some rational or irrational fears that people may have about life too?
And I think it's not just fears. I think people are just afraid to think about it, but they don't admit that. What they say instead is, it's too complicated. Well, the thing is, they shouldn't be afraid of being scared. It is natural to be scared. I remember a quote from Harry Levinson, a psychologist, who said, all change is loss, and all loss must be mourned. There's no quick way around it. It takes time to get over it. But the thing is, it's unknown at the time you retire. There is no need to fear the unknown, simply because it doesn't have to be unknown. There's lots written about it, whether it's my book or hundreds of others. So there's no need to be scared of the unknown. There's no need to be scared of things that don't work according to plan. As I said, nothing ever does. There's no need to be scared, you say, of losing your regular paycheck. You can make your own arrangements for a new regular paycheck. Those are the irrational fears, the unnecessary fears. And the best way to deal with them is actually to confront them. They say a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Take that first step. Once you confront it, it tends to go away as you learn about it. It's just shying away from it that gives you irrational fears. So I wrote my book partly to be a guide to others, as well as an explanation to myself.
Absolutely. And I think that's important too. I had an idea. I wanted to piggyback off something you said, but something that I have noticed so far. We're only just a few minutes into this recording, and I think you've already dropped like 4 or 5 great sayings from people. You're a quote machine so far. And not only do you know the quote, but you actually know who said the quote as well. I think it was said that the most misattributable quotes are to either Abraham Lincoln or Winston Churchill, right? They made a whole bunch of quotes they didn't actually say. But you've known so much. I'm going to listen to this when we're done and find out how many people's quotes you actually had in here. So it's amazing.
Probably they're all done at this point.
Maybe.
Disappointed.
Well, sure. So what would you say to someone who doesn't think they really have much time left, whether they're in their 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever that is, and they're saying, I'm done, what would you say to them?
Well, if they're not in good health, who knows? Maybe that is the case. But let's assume they're in good health. One of the things I've found is that most people don't understand how long they're likely to live. And for example, many people remember that the life expectancy at birth is, in round numbers, about 75 years. So when they're 60, they'll think, okay, I got 15 years to go. Wrong. It's probably more like 25 years on average. Well, really, they say, how come? What happened to age 75 if I'm 60? Well, there's only 15 years to 75. And the answer, and it's not an easy one to explain, but this is the best I can do. The answer is that we're actually talking about different groups of people. The people for whom 75 is the average survival age is the group of newborns. For them, 75 is the average. Okay. Now think of those who reach age 60. They're part of that original group. They were the newborns once, but a number of people have dropped out of the group. All the people who died before age 60 have dropped out of the group. This is now a different group. And it's those who dropped out of the group by dying before age 60 who kept the average down at 75 because they had an average age of death of maybe 40. Mm-hmm. So those who reach age 65 or 60 actually have more than age 75 to go to. They've got roughly 85. And by the time they reach age 70, they're part of a smaller group, an even longer lived group. And so they'll go beyond 85, et cetera, et cetera. So, by the way, I don't like the expression life expectancy, which is what everyone uses, because people tend to misinterpret it as being like the limit of life. This is when I can expect to pass away. So I prefer average survival age. It's just the average age to which people will survive. Some will survive longer, some will survive less. I mean, it's about a 50-50 as to whether you go before or go after. So I like average survival age rather than life expectancy, as if that's the terminal age that I can expect.
Yeah, I like that as well. It has a much more positive connotation to it as well.
Oh gosh, I love that. That's a lovely phrase, positive connotations, because as actuaries, we grew up studying mortality tables. Mm-hmm. Well, I look at exactly the same thing. I don't call them mortality tables anymore. I call them longevity tables.
Okay.
Put a positive spin on this. This says it's not only how many are gone, it's how many are left. This is a longevity table, guys.
Longevity table. I like that. Longevity table. Good deal. So then, awesome. I obviously being a financial advisor, I can get bogged down in some of the financial terms here, but I don't want to do that today. I'd actually like to go around a lot of the research that you've done about blogging around happiness and some of the writings that you've done on happiness. What's your definition of happiness, and maybe talk about some of the posts that you've actually written about, maybe a couple of your favorite ones?
Well, it's almost common sense. Happiness is just feeling good. It's as simple as that. And the thing is, only you can judge how happy you are. What others think about you doesn't matter. You think you're happy, that's all that works. So social scientists distinguish between happiness, which is your emotional feeling right now, maybe right after something nice has just happened to you, and a deeper feeling, a more considerate thing that they call life satisfaction. It's a sort of more thoughtful evaluation about your life and your activities. How do you feel about them? But for this purpose, let's not split hairs. Let's call the whole thing just happiness, even if what we're really talking about is life satisfaction. And when I studied it, again, I wrote this down, and friends said, "This is good stuff. Give me a copy." So I ended up self-publishing the thing. I've written about how it varies with age. I've written about how it varies with the form of society we live in, how it increases with money, because it does, except that it increases rapidly with money until we have enough to live the lifestyle we want. And after that, it takes a hell of a lot more money to generate just a little bit more happiness. You almost peak. But yeah, every little bit still helps.
Diminishing returns,
totally diminishing returns. And I've written about, I've written a review of a book that a guy wrote called Retirement, Heaven or Hell, Which Will You Choose? I've written about teachable moments in life, that there are times in life, whether you reach a round number, when some event happens, etc. These are moments to reflect on and start thinking about it. And generally, the more reflective you are that way, the happier you tend to be.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned a little bit ago of that, like short-term happiness when something happens that makes you happy versus you're just happy maybe all the time. I always thought of that as I define that as like joy. Like you have joy in you because you are a happy person. You're not just happy because of an external event. It's like you have the internal joy. That's how I define that one. And that sounds like what you're talking about.
Very nicely put. Very nicely.
And you even talk about a Ucurve of happiness. Can you describe that a little bit too?
It's absolutely amazing. Again, nothing to do with me. It's what I discovered. And the last time I looked, it was the same U shape generally in 74 countries. So it's pretty much universal. Yeah. And this is the thing. Happiness depends on an awful lot of stuff. And when you isolate various pieces of it, and there are mathematical ways of saying if we take this group of people, et cetera, et cetera. But when you isolate the effect of age, you get a U-curve. So it starts off happy. We're happy when we're young. And we feel that life is great. They lived happily ever after, that sort of thing. And then we go into the world as adults and we encounter reality, which we hadn't encountered as kids. And even though we have great experiences, there are always so many things that don't work out the way we hoped. And we feel frustrated. And that frustration results in our reporting our happiness as generally declining. So somewhere around age 45 to 50. Now, this is a national average. Individuals vary enormously. But generally somewhere around 45, 50, that's the lowest point. And after that, the happiness curve tends to turn upwards. And by 65 or 70, it's even higher than it was at 20. So that's the U-curve, and it keeps going up. Now, it turns out this has absolutely nothing to do with retirement. There's a neurological reason for it. It's based on brain chemistry, dopamine, all that kind of stuff, but too long to go into that. Let's just say this is the psychological explanation. The psychological explanation of why it goes up at the end is that instead of being, as we are through our working life very often, perfectionists who end up disappointed. Damn it, we've got to make that better. This isn't quite right. Got to do this, got to do this. Instead of that, we make peace with life. We say, this is okay. We see the glass as half full rather than half empty. And we say to ourselves, this is pretty good. And pretty good is pretty good, and it's good enough for me. And that's when the happiness curve tends to start going up.
Yeah. I think I've dealt with similar things within, my own industry. And that's where if you got to do everything perfect, right? Everything has to be perfect. And it doesn't have to be perfect, because if it has to be done perfect, you're never going to train anyone else to do the job. And maybe they can't do it better than you. Maybe they can. A lot of times they probably can. But I've heard the phrase 80% is good enough. If somebody can do it 80% as well as you can delegate that. So
let me give you another quote. Herbert Simon, Nobel Prize winner, came up with the word satisfice, which sounds like a combination of satisfy and suffice. And that's exactly what it used to mean, apparently, in the old days. Herbert Simon said this was an old Scottish word, and he resurrected it. And essentially, it says, set yourself very high standards, and when something happens that meets it, move on. Don't wait to be a perfectionist. For one thing, you'll never know what is perfect. It'll cause you a bunch of inaction where you'll end up doing absolutely nothing. And life is too short for that. So 80%, if you want to call it that, you're satisficing. You're saying, I've got a very high standard. I've reached it. Let's move on and enjoy the next thing. And so there's another quote for you.
Thank you. Well, it's probably like writing a book. There's always more changes and edits and tweaks that you could make to make it just a little bit better. And it's like, but someday you've got to actually publish the book.
Yes, absolutely. Spot on. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. And many people like to do things with a lot of intention, including myself. Every year I make not only business goals, but I make personal goals and family goals as well. So, if I'm exercising, there's a reason. If I'm taking martial arts, there's a reason, behind all of that. And so having a balance in life, though, is kind of relative to every person's life. And there's always going to be, I think, seasons of unbalance there as well. But you've got 7 keys to like an abundant life. Can you go through maybe a couple of those, and then how we can access
I'll give you all 7.
All 7? All right.
Yes, because it's quite simple. And it's a fantastic idea. And so, again, if it's a fantastic idea, it clearly is not mine. I got it from someone else. I got it from a guy named Ed Jacobson. And he reminds us that we think of money as the measure of abundance, but life gives us an abundance in so many other forms. And we may think we have an investment portfolio. Ed called this your life's abundance portfolio. And what are the different types of assets in it? He mentioned 7 of them. And I can't remember the words he used, but I remember them simply myself in pairs. So family and friends, work and play, physical health and mental health, including spiritual health. So that's 6. What's the 7th one? Oh, money. Okay, so these are the 7 asset classes in our life's abundance portfolio, which is a concept that appealed to a geek like me. Yeah. And Ed's idea was very simple. He said, under those 7 headings, rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. Well, how would you rate yourself? Again, there are no right or wrong answers. Only your verdict, only your numbers are correct. Then ask yourself, am I happy with those numbers? Are there some of those numbers that I would like to raise? Mm-hmm. And if so, what is within my power to raise those numbers in those categories? And if you do that, that starts to give you a sense of purpose, a sense of motivation, a sense of things you will do to increase your own life's abundance. And again, the nice thing about this is it's not an instant exercise, nor is it a one-shot exercise. Mm-hmm. Periodically revisit it and see where you are now, and what are the things where you feel there's a lack and you'd like to improve them. So it's a tremendously motivating approach to doing things, and I thank Ed for the idea.
Okay, so you mentioned maybe helping to educate yourself, and when I say yourself, I mean the average person that's out there looking for information on retirement, and maybe starting that process 5 years, no magic number on 5, 6, 10, whatever it is. But, with so much information out there, some of it's not necessarily right. I mean, it can be flat out wrong, misinformation, stuff like that. So if someone's, as they're doing this research, how do they know where to go to find, accurate information?
I have absolutely no idea. I honestly don't know. I have no expertise there. The one background thought I have is that, I mean, we get all this misinformation and clickbait and stuff like mm-hmm. that right now. Mm-hmm. And the thing that helps us avoid it is actually knowing a little bit about life and having some preconceived ideas about it. Mm-hmm. And that came from the education we got. Mm-hmm. And so it's going to be even worse when we get into life 2, because we haven't had an education for life 2. And if we have an education for life 2, then some of the misleading things, some of the misinformation, etc., some of the ways in which people try and grab us for their own purposes, etc., maybe we've got a better chance of avoiding it if we have an education for life 2. And so that's what I tried to do with the Life 2 book. And very quickly, I came up with sort of 3 subjects that are really important, not math, history, economics, geography, literature, and all that kind of stuff that we study for Life 1, but three big questions to answer. One is to do with motive, identity, purpose. It's, who am I now? The second one is, my gosh, remember all this time that I wanted? I've got it. How do I fill my time? And linked to that, how do I coordinate my time with my life partner? Mm-hmm. Because being together all the time is not necessarily always a good thing. And the third one is the one that financial geeks love to think about: will I outlive my money? And so I've tried to educate on all those 3 aspects in my Life 2 book. And the goal is that it's kind of like driving a car. You want to be sitting there in the car. You still have decisions to make. You still have to decide what direction. You still have to decide what speed. But at least you're sitting there in the driver's seat and you feel in control. And I think if we have that kind of education, which we don't, and God knows when we'll get it, we will have more of a feeling in control and have slightly more chance of resisting all the misinformation, because we'll have a way to evaluate it. Mm-hmm. That's the best I can come up with. I really do. This is not an area I'm an expert on at all.
I know. And it's one of those areas where I'm going to butcher the quote and I have no idea who said it. So I feel opposite of you, but it's I guess the basics of it was right now, it's not so much about finding information that's the problem. It's about finding information that just isn't so.
Yeah. Yeah. In so many aspects of life. Yeah.
And being able to discern.
Yeah.
What we have to do.
So many of us fail at that. And it's all the easier to fail because if we have a predisposition towards a certain kind of information, mm-hmm. we can live with nothing but that kind of information now. And I think it takes a more sober, even temperament and mind to say, well, let me find out about other points of view as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you can research things.
Yeah. It's like, are my thought processes actually correct? Right. You know?
Yes.
It's like,
Yes.
it's why you need to subscribe to both like the New York Times and Fox News. So you get both sides, right?
Yes.
Got to entertain it all.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And so you mentioned, how do you fill that time with, your life partner? So with your wife, did she have the same issues that you did when you got into retirement, or when she got into retirement, or life too?
Well,
Sorry.
Not yet. Her experience is entirely different from mine. I mean, she spent most of her life as the rock on which our family was built.
Mm-hmm.
Her identity was the family identity. She was a wife. She was a mother.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't after we were moved to the UK by Russell Investments when I was in my 50s. And then Russell moved me back to the States temporarily. So my wife, Susan, stayed in London. And temporarily, I went back and forth through this period because we wanted to see each other. Temporarily turned out to last for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And then they said they wanted me to stay in New York permanently. So meanwhile, she'd been there for all these years. And she finally found something that gave her her own identity for the first time. She got into the world of ballet, where she was a big fan. I mean, not as a dancer, she was just a fan.
Mm-hmm.
And she found the world's oldest ballet appreciation society in London called the London Ballet Circle. And so she joined it and she went to their meetings and she got interested, and they discovered she was an awfully capable person. So they gave her things to do over there. And then they put her on the board, and then they made her the chair of the board. And she's been chair for, I don't know, 9 or 10 years now. And this absolutely defines her world today. She's in there. She knows all the big stars. She interviews them. She does all kinds of stuff. And it's going to be really interesting to see if she can step away from it, at least gradually. So we're not done yet with a family transition to life too. So as I say, a couple is not just a couple. We're also two different individual people. And you have to find happiness not just as a couple, but even as two individuals. So I found mine. To the extent I can, I will help her find hers, but she's not there yet.
Nice. And my wife and I are two different people too. Anytime we go on vacation, we've now started discussing, okay, what do you want to get out of this vacation? Here's what I would like to do. Here's what you would like to do. And then, there's probably going to be some of that time that we can be together too. But we do want to do some certain things that actually recharge our own batteries. And she gets recharged differently than I do.
That's exactly our story as well. That's exactly our story as well. So even on vacation, we're not together all the time by any means. Yeah.
Well, now you've lived in the defined benefit and pension world for a lot of your life, and so most likely you've got a little bit of a different mindset, than most people entering retirement. And so maybe I don't know if you've got some ideas on how can someone really get in that mindset of decumulation, after years of being frugal and accumulation focused, right? We've been saving money and working, and now we're supposed to shift our mindset to spending all of that money. How would you maybe help someone through that switch in the mindset?
Well, I had to do that myself, because even though I was a consultant to defined benefit plans, our own plan at Russell was defined contribution. And so we accumulated money, we invested it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then came the time when we had to decumulate. And there is very little written about that. People say 10,000 baby boomers are retiring every day. Baby boomers, my God, they're kids. I was a World War II baby. So I had even less information available than the baby boomers have today. So I had to dream it all up myself. And I think one place in the world where you see things not working out the way they ought to is Australia. Their equivalent of Social Security is a contribution system that accumulates. You have individual accounts, just like in a defined contribution plan.
Yeah.
And then they have to decide what they do, how much they spend as they draw down the money and decumulate. And a recent survey discovered that on average, at death, the estate contains 90% of the amount that there was at retirement. So they've hardly touched the capital at all. And my friend, Professor Mayer Statman, wrote a paper on this, about the fact that it's a mental hurdle many people can't overcome. To say, I've finally got into the habit of accumulating money. Now spend it down. No, I will just live on the income. Why? Because I don't know how long I'm going to live. At the same time that they underestimate how long they're going to live, they know there's a chance that they'll live a long time. And the only way to be absolutely certain that your capital will not run out is that you don't touch it. And so I think this is where people like you and I can help the general public to say, you probably need to eat into capital. And we need to show them how long the capital will last. So for example, talk to someone who is 60 or whatever and say, so your average survival time is going to be 25 years. Let's put in a margin of safety because you don't want to be scared about this because you are already scared. Let's call it 30. If you have a life partner, make it even longer. And then do the calculation to show them that they can withdraw this amount of money with reasonable security for the 30 years. And then you say, yeah, but if we keep living, then the 30 years isn't going to be enough. Fine. Every 5 or 6 years, we'll reestablish, are you both still healthy? If so, the horizon might go up 1 year or so. But we can do that gradually. And we've got the margin built in for a start. And then you've got other margins built in as well, because when the first one passes away, the second one will need less money. And we've calculated this to be as much as will last 30 years. And the amount of time it now needs to last is only one lifetime, not a joint and survival life. So you've got 2 more margins in there. And I think if you do that kind of thing and explain the logic of it to them that way, they can see that they can draw down capital at a certain pace and not worry. They can sleep easily at night, not worry about, oh my goodness, if I live to 90, I'm not going to have any money left. And the constant adjustment. So I think you end up not just the financial advisor, I think you end up a financial friend. And I think the more of this kind of thing and the more of the psychological aspects you help with, the more the emphasis is on friend than on financial. And I think there is a huge need for this. And I think this is where someone like you comes in.
Oh, it's absolutely something we run into all the time, because the way I've come to call that confidence in spending. Somebody might have all the money that they need for retirement, yet they can't let go of that frugality and that fear, even though we've shown them it's like, you're going to be hard pressed to ever, I mean, you're going to have to seriously change some spending habits if you're going to go through all your money. There's almost like no way, short of like, the world blowing up, you're going to run out of money. You're going to be fine. And yet they're still not able to make that switch and spend the money that we make them. Right. And
I think it's the fear.
Yeah.
And it's taking the first step with a guide who shows them the way. And I think that's where you come in to take that first step with them and to say, this is the path. And I will be your guide. And I've seen many people go along this. You haven't. You're afraid. Confront the fear. And it's actually, you will be so relieved when you see what it's like, really.
I feel like the Mandalorian now. This is the way.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind, we can shift a little bit here because we're starting to get close to running up on our time here, and appreciate all that you've done so far. I'd kind of like to go into, are there any books? Now, we have yours that you're recommending, and then we'll have links to that in the show notes. And actually, as a matter of fact, I'll take this time to say that we're going to have a few copies on hand. So if anybody listening to this would like to get a copy of his book, Life 2, then go ahead and leave an honest review for our podcast, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Copy and paste that review, email that to asknate@retirementrescueradio.com. Include your address where we can send the book, and we'll get those out. We'll just send them out until they're gone.
Oh, how nice. Thank you. Sales will go up.
There you go.
I wrote it for myself. Sales will go up.
There you go. So other than your book, Life 2, are there any other ones that you can think of that you might recommend for somebody that could be dealing with some of this, or just any of them that have actually made a big difference in your life in any area?
Actually, not so much made a difference in my life, but as impressed me on this kind of subject. It's a book by Laura Carstensen, who's a professor at Stanford, and it was written about 10 years ago, and it's called A Long, Bright Future. And she deals with this in an entirely different way. She says, if we knew that our life expectancy is not 75 years, but 100, wouldn't we live our lives differently? Would we just add 25 years on at the end?
Mhm.
No, we wouldn't. We would totally change the pace at which we lived our lives, the phases of our lives, and so on. And that really impressed me, the idea of saying we want to live maybe life is a 5-act play instead of a 3-act play. Learn, earn, burn. We want all kinds of things. We want on-ramps and off-ramps. We want to mix the generation, because right now the learn, earn, and burn generations don't interact an awful lot. We want to mix them. We want to mentor. We want to volunteer. We want all kinds of things. We want more time when we're younger with our kids. Anyway, Laura's book sets out a long, bright future as how would we live 100-year life instead of a 75-year life.
I like that. Nice. What if we all lived or expected to live to 100?
Yeah. Or if at least some of us did. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're getting pretty close to that.
Some of today's newborns are going to get that.
Mm-hmm. Well, my great grandmother lived to be 103.
Oh, wonderful! So you have good genes.
Yeah, and her older sister attended her funeral.
Chose wisely. Yeah,
definitely. Okay, I know. There's something called Living to 100 calculator, and I think it's literally livingto100.com. Or livingto100calculator.com. Okay. One of the two, and you can actually put some of your life, your lifestyle, your ancestors, how long they lived, like my great grandmother, right? You can put some of that stuff, what kind of health you're in now, how often you either drink or do, you can put some of that in there, and it's supposed to do some magical calculation to tell you how long you're going to live. And mine was 96. So yeah, I don't know. But like I say,
mine goes into the 90s as well. So my family has a few years of me to put up with.
Yep, me too. Okay. What would you say is some of the best advice that you've ever received?
Oh, gosh. I hate getting advice.
Me too.
Someone asked me this some time ago, and I asked my wife, because she knows me better than anyone else. And she said, well, remember the card? And I said, oh, yeah. When our son was born, her sister, my sister-in-law, gave us a card. And I remember vividly the words in the card. It said, we give our kids 2 precious things. One is roots, the other wings. And we have tried to bring up the kids to give them both roots and wings. And I noticed that loving parents show their kids the roots that they have and the protection they have, the nest. It's much tougher giving them wings, because then you have to let them go. But if you don't let them go, they're not going to live the lives they are capable of leading. And so giving them wings as well as roots is a really important thing.
Yeah, definitely. Well, what would you say is, I don't know if you would mind sharing 1 or 2 of your personal habits that you feel leads to the amount of success that you've gotten so far?
Oh. I don't think you want an answer to that. I'll tell you why. The habit that led to my success as a consultant was curiosity, a childlike curiosity. You know how you talk to a child and you explain something, and the child says, well, why? And so you explain, and then they say, well, why? And they go on, why? And I think I kept asking why. And I ended up understanding things better sometimes because I dug deeper than most. But the reason I say you may not want an answer to this is because it's so much a part of my personality that I've also learned that in a social context, this can be awfully annoying to others.
In a parental context, it's pretty annoying too. Yes. My son has started calling it the why monster. He just keeps asking why like 87 times until we're finally like, just because. That's
Well, who knows? This may end up making him a greater success in his career.
I know. It's like
allow a few of the whys.
Definitely, yeah. It's like I try to allow as much as possible because I don't want to squash the curiosity.
Right.
Yeah, I do know asking questions is how you learn. But yeah, after a while, I'm like, come on, now you're just saying that just to be annoying. It's like you're done actually figuring it out. All right. Well, cool. What would you say is something that let's fast forward like 20 years, something that you would like to see be considered absolutely absurd? Or said another way, 20 years from now, if you look back, I want you to say, man, I can't believe that we used to X, whatever that is.
Well, this has sort of been a theme all the way through. I think it's education for life too. 20 years from now, I think we're going to say, I can't believe we didn't realize how important that kind of education is. Today, we don't see it. 20 years from now, we'll say, oh my goodness, of course we need it. Let's at least start now. It's never too late.
Best time to plant a tree is 10 years ago. Second best time is today.
Perfect.
No idea who said
that. It doesn't matter. But the thing is, there is so much wisdom in some of these quotes, isn't there? Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
They can be applied so many different ways. Okay. Let's see here. And we already know that I think throughout this entire time, I normally ask people what their definition of retirement is, but I think we got that early on with you about what your definition is throughout.
It's the best time of life, freedom, time, happiness. You got more, you got fewer obligations, you got more control, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, it's the best time of life. Yeah.
Yeah. I know that so some of those happiness studies, I think that maybe you looked at when you were doing your research, when coming up with that Ucurve. I've seen that too, because I've heard that people that in retirement happen to be some of the happiest people. And that usually takes people by surprise because they're like, well, I thought people were the happiest when they're young and they're kids. They're carefree. And I'm like, well, yeah, I can see that. But when you're older too, now you've got money. When you're a kid, you got to ask your parents for everything.
But as I say, it's not just the money. It's also the fact that you've come to terms with life.
Yep.
And so you're much more comfortable. As I say, the glass half full instead of the glass half empty. Although the joke about that is that if you ask an actuary to describe that glass, the actuary will say, that's a glass that's twice as big as it needs to be. Couldn't resist that.
That's a good one. Actuarial humor there. Awesome. All right.
If there is such a thing, yeah.
Yes, right. So I guess if you would like, can you recommend any internet sources? And then, of course, this will be a place for you to recommend your website and any other resources that you feel would be helpful or how people could really find and connect with you.
Oh, you mean sort of retirement related kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Well, mine is called donezra.com. I wanted to call it freedomtimehappiness.com. And my internet guy said, are you crazy? You think anyone will ever remember that?
Nope.
So what will they remember? He said, well, at least if they think of you, donezra.com, they might remember. So that's what the website is called. And there's a whole bunch. And actually, there's a longer version of the Life 2 book, which is called Freedom, Time, Happiness. You can see I love these words. And it's free. It's on the website. It's available there.
Okay.
The thought of some of the lessons that I've got in my life, I think from my happiness book, the two that I remember as helping happiness are, number one, spend your money on shared experiences rather than on things. You'll treasure them much longer. And the other one is, the less you expect, the more you'll find to be grateful for. And I think those are kind of, those are words of wisdom, if you like. They have nothing to do with my website, but those are words of wisdom that I remember as sort of guiding my life today.
I like that. I've heard that one about spending money on experiences rather than things. And because the things, they can break and go away, but the memories, as long as you don't have Alzheimer's, it's like you'll remember those. You'll have those for your entire life, and that's what people really remember. They don't remember the toy Ninja Turtle they had when they were 2 years old.
I thought of this when I read many years ago about a house fire, and the thing that people most want to save in a house fire is their photograph albums.
Pictures, yeah.
I mean, today you've got the cloud and all that kind of stuff, but it's those memories much more than the things there. It's the memories, because they help define you.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Well, all right. Any other, I guess, parting pieces of advice or guidance that you'd like to leave before we sign off here? You've given so much already so far.
No, just to thank you for allowing me to participate in this chat. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and that's been great. Thank you very much.
You bet, and thank you for being willing to come on. Because I think you're going to be able to help rescue some retirements or some life twos. So
if there's even one person who gets one thing out of this, that's part of the reward I feel that I get.
Worth it. Don, thank you for coming on, and we're going to go forward and make the best of all of our life twos.
Wonderful. Thank you.